So 1 year anniversary. Congratulations. That is the anniversary of what? Maybe you can describe for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had been like most people that have ever played around with meditation apps, I'd been dabbling and even, helped build one that was a free meditation app, but I just was dabbling. I was always dabbling. I was doing the 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, just those little sessions guided, and they were fantastic. Very, very great prescriptive meditation. Oh, you have something wrong. You're feeling stressed, fear of flying, whatever it is. Like there's all these courses for that. You can take them, there's not a lack of apps that offer this type of content. I think that the shift and the change was telling myself that this is a long road to practice to really train the brain. Like if you think about if we want to do anything and Tim, you know this way better than I do. If you want to do anything, if you want to be really good at something, it can't just be an afterthought, casual. I'm going to make time for this when I feel like it. Exactly. So I made that shift in my brain and said, okay, I believe there is something worth pursuing here, that a dedicated, longer practice, longer duration, and a more serious discipline. So for me, that was a form of Zen called Sanbo Zen.
Sambo?
Yeah, Sanbo is like the offshoot. It's more kind of a lay Zen.
How do you spell it?
Sanbo.
Sambo Zen.
Yeah, so when I heard about this and was introduced to my teacher, Henry, got excited about it and really decided to dive in and say, okay, I'm going to read a few of the books that are out there on this type of Zen and then create a real practice that is, 55 minutes of sitting a day.
How much is it?
55 minutes.
Why 55 minutes?
Well, you do 25.
I like fives, but
yeah, you do 25 minutes of your first sit, and then you do a 5-minute walking meditation, and then another 25-minute sit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And for those wondering, so I just looked it up. Sambo Kyodang is a lay Zen sect derived from both the Soto and the Rinzai traditions. Sambo literally means 3 treasures. I wonder what the treasures are. Sang is like ichi-ni-sang, sang 3. Sambo, bo is like bo-chang, like my darling, my treasure kind of thing. But yeah, sambo is 3 treasures, and then kyo, well, we can get into the Japanese another time. But yeah, kyodan, religious organization or teaching organization. That's cool. So 55 minutes. Do you know what the 3 treasures are?
Yeah, the one treasure is the Sangha, so the group. The other one is the Dharma, the teachings. And the third one is escaping me right now. You could just type in 3 treasures. 3 treasures apply more than just Sambo.
Okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, wait a minute. 3 jewels are the Buddha, the fully enlightened one, the Dharma, the teachings expounded by the Buddha, hence the term or phrase Dharma talks, if you've ever heard that, and the Sangha, the monastic order of Buddhism that practice dharmas, but that's also colloquially thought of as the group that practices together. Roger that. Okay. So you've done 55 minutes a day for a year.
I will say that I have certainly missed a few days, but nothing crazy. Not like where I'm like, oh, I missed that entire week. Like there'll be a day or two where it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been also a handful of days that are on the 25-minute side. Like there was definitely versus doing the 55. But yeah, for the most part, I've been really consistent.
What is the practice? What is the session? I know you mentioned it in brief already, but what does a session look like and feel like to you?
Well, it depends on where you are in your practice. When you're first being instructed, the teaching is essentially kind of counting or just following the breath. So very almost like Vipassana style.
Yeah.
Just to get that base level of concentration honed. So, it's a very, like there's a teaching where they talk about the Zen master that was sitting and the concentration, was so intense that they're sweating. Like you can see sweat on their brow because it is like a very active thing that is happening with the honed concentration.
Yeah, they hit you with a switch if you're nodding off.
They still do that. If you would like to request it, you can go in the Zendo and you can request that happen. It's not for pain; it's for a jolt. Like it's not like a beating practice.
This is for you, not for me.
Exactly. So, so that's that. Initially, it's just that initial kind of counting and awareness, and then eventually, if your teacher and you feel you're ready for it, you take on a koan, which is one of these things to sit with, like just a Zen kind of saying or word to sit with that is used as kind of what's the best way to put it? Kind of like just a helping aid.
It's like a paradoxical cue,
right?
Or it's something like that. Yeah, paradoxical anecdote or riddle used in Zen Buddhism to demonstrate the inadequacy of logical reasoning and to provoke enlightenment. That is the definition that comes up for me.
Yes.
Koan.
So what you do is when you sit with that koan, eventually you will be able to answer it. And there are hundreds of them. And there are checking questions that are done with your instructor.
Checking questions.
That's right. So if you sit down with a Zen master and they ask you, probably the most famous one is the sound of one hand clapping.
Yeah, right.
You would then be able to answer that question through a series of checks, and eventually you can go through and kind of answer all of them. So you'd be able to answer all of the
So there's a right and a wrong answer?
Yes.
To something like
more
that?
or less,
oh,
yeah.
Wow. Oh, goddamn, that's stressful.
But I mean, they get it. You get it wrong a lot. So essentially, like if you're going to do one of these, they call them like a session, where you go and do these like multi-day retreats. You will go and you will sit, and then you have a one-on-one session with your Zen master in the evening when you're kind of wrapping up, and they'll sit you down and say, what is the answer to this question, whatever you're sitting with. So some people sit with, most common one is one called mu, and they'll say, what is mu? And then you can either say, I don't know, and you can walk out, and that's fine. They ring the bell and the next person goes in, or you can try and answer it. And
wait, so what is mu? I mean, not that I'm not asking you to give the cheat sheet for people, but
I don't know the answer to that question.
But broadly speaking, is mu a character?
Yeah, so there's a Japanese character for it. It means emptiness or not.
Like mushin. Mushin is like no mind.
No, not exactly. Empty.
Yeah.
So
Mushin.
basically where that came from is there was a very famous Zen teacher, Zen master named Joshu. And Joshu was asked by a monk one day. The monk asked Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Joshu's answer was just mu. And that was coming from, they will tell you that answer was coming from a non-dual world. So it was like, it's kind of hard to explain.
It gets a little tricky.
Yeah, exactly. So what you do?
Do you want me to give you I can give you a breather if you like.
Yeah.
I've got some stuff, but yes,
Yeah,
continue.
so you just basically sit with, what are you talking about? What breather?
I'm just saying, if you want a moment to gather yourself, because this is some pretty esoteric shit, I can read what I found on the sasho, the checking questions.
You can read the answers? No, read what you found.
Read the answers like the.
Just read my entire practice,
like the mantras for transcendental meditation, where they're just listed out by age.
That's right.
Yeah, I could do that, and just like to really make everyone cry. And I say that as someone who paid for the training and still uses TM. I still use it. So teachers may probe students about their koan practice using sasho, checking questions to validate their satori understanding, although I would debate the translation of satori there, or kensho, which is a really cool word, like seeing the nature, seeing the phenomenon. For the mu koan and the clapping hand koan, there are 20 to 100 checking questions depending on the teaching lineage. The checking questions serve to deepen the insight of the student, but also to test his or her understanding. That's wild that there would be questions. I'm just trying to imagine. I'm not asking you to spill the beans on the secret cult that you've joined, but the questions that would be related to something like, what is the hand of one hand clapping?
Yeah, but
right? It seems like it's unanswerable by definition because it's intended to show the inadequacy of logic.
That's right. And so the best way it's been described to me, and this wasn't by my Zen teacher, but I've heard it described elsewhere, is like the answers are going to be something that you will only understand if you've had that Kensho awakening type moment, or you would only be able to provide.
Mm-hmm.
So your answers, in the same way that when the monk asked, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Joshu's response was mu. Like that would make no sense at all. So your answers are also going to make no sense in this plane, if that makes sense. But your teacher will understand them because they will be listening from another plane. Does that make sense?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, oh, here, let me give it an analogy. It's going to be terrible. You're going to love it. So it's like if you're trying to explain like ejaculation to someone who's never ejaculated, and you're like, it's kind of like a sneeze in your balls, and they're like, what? And like, there's never going to understand
this is
it.
a
But
bad one, Tim.
if they've had the experience of ejaculating, then like, there's kind of no explanation needed, and you can give like a moo type answer, and they're like, oh yeah, I hear you, moo. It's so moo. That stuff is so moo.
I don't know that that's how I'd describe it, but that I like it. I mean,
you're welcome.
Yeah, you're practically a Zen master, Tim.
This is 3 hard kombuchas later. I think I'm enlightened. I think
it's great. No, but I that's the gist of it. Is like we would never, even if we read the answers, it
can't be a reading based, logic based
Exactly.
answer. It has to be something that you have a felt experience of through this thing that is given.
And that's why there's so many checking questions. Because they'll be checking from a bunch of different angles whether or not you've actually felt or had the experience versus it just being like a red response.